Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na ma tu'allimuna wa zidna bi fadlika 'ilman wa ta'liman. Innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. So he says, حدثنا خالد بن مخلد قال حدثنا سليمان بن بلال قال حدثنا سهيل ibn Abi Salih عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة. So this is again a classic example of how Imam Bukhari does one thing in one book and another thing in another book. So Suhail ibn Abi Salih عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة. This kind of chain is a classic chain. We find it in Muwatta, you find it in Sahih Muslim, but we don't find it in Bukhari, meaning we don't find it in Sahih Bukhari. It's not of that level, right? If you can imagine, this is a Mercedes chain of transmission, but he said, "I'm not interested in Mercedes. I'm dealing with Lamborghinis and Ferraris in Sahih Bukhari." Um, so it's you find this, so it says hadithun sahihun akhrajahu Muslimun wa Tirmidhi wa Ahmad. So it's on the level of Sahih Muslim because Muslim is slightly below, right? He's got the top two levels and going down to the third level. It's not on the level of Sahih Bukhari, right? So when you say someone comes along and says the hadith is not Sahih, it's not in Bukhari, that doesn't make any sense at all. That's like saying it's not a Ferrari, so why would you buy it, right? Um, عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال راغم أنفه راغم أنفه راغم أنفه قالوا يا رسول الله من قال من أدرك والديه عنده آه من أدرك الكبر والديه عنده الكبر أو أحدهما فدخل النار. So he says, may his face be rubbed in the earth, may his nose be rubbed in the earth, may his nose be rubbed in the earth. I may he come to, like, shame on him, basically, right? Shame on him. Shame on him. Who? قالوا يا رسول الله. They said, who are you talking about, O Messenger of Allah? They said, he who has parents who are elderly, or at least one elderly parent, and then, despite the opportunity to do so many good deeds, enters the hellfire. Like, what's your problem, right? That's like, so. I.e., you have a huge opportunity to look after them, to help them, etc. To do this, and then you fail, right? So basically, may you come to nothing. Like, you have such an opportunity, and then you fail, right? And this is the key thing to understand in life. So just give me 1 second. This is the key thing to understand is that we don't look at things, we look at things vis-a-vis there being an opportunity to do something. So, crying baby. Oh my God, I'm so tired. Why is this baby crying? It's an opportunity to be nice to somebody. Here is somebody who falls over. Opportunity to look after them. Here is somebody who's being wronged. Opportunity to look after them, to help to defend them. Here's somebody who's being rude to you. Oh, great, an opportunity to be calm, right? Because we see things and people and we don't see opportunities, we get confused, right? And it's hard, right? It's hard, like someone's rude to you, it's hard not to be offended or not to be this, whatever. But it's just, all it is we're in a computer game, and the computer game is just opportunities to do things, right? Like, there's a story of a guy who heard the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that he said, I can't remember the hadith now, but like, may Allah forgive a person, something like, who when somebody he sells something to somebody and then the other person asks for his money back without a legitimate reason, and he just gives it back anyway, right? So, obviously, so, but by default, you cannot come demand that you for to return something unless they have a return policy or whatever. But he said, somebody comes to you and says, oh, I'm sorry, I bought the car from you, but I actually want my money back. I don't want it, even though there's nothing wrong with it, right? So the Prophet made a particular dua for that person. So there was a man, he said, well, I want to be in that situation. So he opened a shop, sold things in his shop, just waiting for the day that somebody would come back and say, can I take this back? That was all he did. The day that somebody came along and took something back, he said, sure, here you go. And then he closed his shop. All he was doing was just waiting for the opportunity, right? That's all he wanted to do. So this is how life is. It's just opportunities, right? So here, for example, behind me, there is a what's it called? Gerber, is it Gerber baby? That's the phrase? Yeah, I think that's what it was, right? The Gerber baby child, right? Mikhail.
I'm 9 years old.
Okay, you're not a Gerber baby, but so I look at my child, and you might, for example, you look at your child as what? You look at your child as, oh, that's my son, that's my this, that's my that. So your child is an opportunity, right? An annoying child is an opportunity for patience.
Not true.
Okay, a whatever it is. So instead of looking at people, you see an opportunity, right? But if you look at people, then if that child dies, your iman, like your iman becomes shaky. Like, oh my God, like you can lose your faith, like you just break down. Because like my whole life was my son. My whole life was my business. My whole life was my health. My whole life was my looks. My whole life, whatever it was, as opposed to my looks, opportunity to fear Allah, opportunity to thank Allah, my wealth, opportunity to do good things. It's an opportunity to do something as opposed to what it is, right? So the believer, that's how the believer looks at things is this is an opportunity to do this. That's all, right? Headache, an opportunity to be patient, right? Just look at things in terms of, so here the Prophet ﷺ is like, you have an elderly parent, the parent cannot walk. He has to go in a wheelchair. This is like cash in opportunities for you to do good deeds, and yet you messed up. What's your problem? Right? This is what the Prophet is telling us. Right? Look at it as opportunity as opposed to, oh my God, I'm trying to finish my master's. You know, my dad is asking me to come around and help. It's like, oh, it's like so difficult, or whatever it is, things in life come up. It's just an opportunity, right? Elderly people are just an opportunity for you, you know, to do good deeds, just like whatever else. It's like when someone's being rude to you, it's just an opportunity for you to show good akhlaq. And then you just upset about it or annoyed about it. It's like they're not even there. It's just a computer game. باب من بر والديه زاد الله في عمره. Right? Bab, quote, chapter concerning he who is good to his parents, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes his life longer. So does that mean that you change destiny? So Allah knew that Farid Dingle would die at this age. But then Allah changed that Farid Dingle managed to change what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew was going to happen, and then destiny changed. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thought something was the case, but turned out the opposite. Is that what's going to happen? The answer is no. The answer is your being good to your parents is part of destiny. So the way in which it works, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a system is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created your dua and created his response to it. Right? Or the words there theologically could be a bit more tight, but Allah doesn't respond. It's not a reaction. Allah's not reacting to us, right? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed every single thing, and all of it is part of a system. And part of the way in which you make money is by working. You worked hard and you made money. You were good to your parents and you live longer. Right? That's how it works. Right. So he says, حدثنا أسبغ ibn al-Faraj قال أخبرني ibn Wahab. So this is the great Ibn Wahab of Egypt. This is the student of Imam Malik. And he's the famous one who said, were it not for Layth ibn Sa'ad and Malik, I would have been lost. So he was a great hadith scholar, right? Huge hadith scholar. But he said, hadith is not enough. Raw data is not enough. You need a mind to process the raw data, right? And so he said, I didn't have that. And I saw in Layth ibn Sa'ad, the great Imam Malik of Egypt, and in him and Imam Malik himself, this ability to process, right? The mind of the mujtahid is different to the mind of, say, a hadith scholar or something like that. So the ability to process information and come up with a conclusion, right? That's Ibn Wahab. عن يحيى بن أيوب عن زبان ibn فائد عن سهل ibn معاذ عن أبيه قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من بر والديه طوبى له زاد الله عز وجل في عمره. Right, so he said, whoever, Prophet said, whoever is good to his parents, good tidings to him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will Almighty Majestic will make his life longer. Right. Um, and then he goes through. So it says this hadith is in Abu Ya'la, it's in Tabarani, but it's not on the level of not on the level of So Ibn Hibban, he says, قال ابن حبان ما كان من رواية الزبان لا يعتبر ليس له في الكتاب إلا الرواية هذه. Where is it? So this scholar here, Sahal ibn Mu'adh, he said, ما كان من رواية الزبان لا يعتبر ليس له في الكتاب إلا الرواية هذه. Um, So, and basically, he's questioning this person here as a ban rating from Sahal. He said it's not really significant. And I'm not sure if this quote is from him or not, but he's saying like it's weak. You shouldn't. Basically, it's not reliable. And then it says قال الحافظ. This is الحافظ ibn Hajar. He says إلا أن أحاديثه حسان في الفضائل والرغائب. Right. So he says, but his hadith are acceptable in fada'il, meaning deeds, actions to do with moral things and general encouragement. So we see a very important thing. So is the hadith correct or incorrect? That's not a proper paradigm. Is it likely the Prophet ﷺ or unlikely the Prophet ﷺ said it? Right? So the system that the ulama use is they say when it comes to halal and haram, we're going to be more strict. When it comes to aqidah, we're going to be super strict. It has to be mutawatir. It has to be a fact. When it comes to halal and haram, we need to have great confidence. When it comes to general sunnahs and things like this, it's much less, right? So we'll trust him, i.e., it's trustworthy enough in these kind of things, right? In these kind of things. And so basically the hadith is weak, but fine enough in this kind of context. Okay. That reminds us, we'll repeat the kind of quote from Imam Ahmad and Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi that they said when we narrate hadiths in halal and haram, we are strict about narrators and strict about chains of transmission. But when it comes to general good deeds and that kind of thing, then we are easy when it comes to narrators and easy when it comes to chain transmission. Who narrated from who exactly? It's not a big deal, right? We don't particularly care, right? So this is important. Someone's going to say, well, this hadith is weak. Why did you quote it on the khutbah, on the minbar? So, well, Imam Bukhari put it in this book and it's good enough for this kind of use, right? It's good enough for this kind of use. So the question is not, is it correct or not? Is have you used the hadith in the right way? This hadith is not strong enough to use in aqidah. This hadith is not strong enough to use in halal and haram. This hadith is not strong enough to use independently. This hadith is strong enough for this kind of use, right? Which is general encouragement. Okay. It's very important to understand that. There's باب لا يستغفر لأبيه لأبيه المشرك. So should you do istighfar for your parents who die as kuffar? حدثني إسحاق قال أخبرنا علي بن حسين قال حدثني أبي عن يزيد بن نحوي يزيد النحوي عن إكرمة the freed slave of Ibn Abbas from Ibn Abbas في قوله عز وجل إما يبلغن عندك الكبر أحدهما أو كلاهما فلا تقل لهما أف, right? And so if ever either of them, one of them or either or both of them should be with you and reach old age, فلا تقل لهما أف, then don't even say right? Don't even say that, right? Let alone something worse than that. So we don't say things like that to our parents. May Allah protect us and forgive us. When you take your parents, like, right, that's rude. And so he says, إلى قوله كما ربياني صغيرا. And then he says, so here, Ibn Abbas, he says, فنسختها. Nasakh means abrogation. There's a rule in the Sharia, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends another rule that removes that rule. It doesn't apply anymore. Okay? Now, frequently the Salaf, the Sahaba and Tabi'in, they use the word nasakh to mean takhsis. They say nasakh, they say abrogation. What they really mean is qualification, meaning this verse was qualified in another verse, not that it was abrogated. So abrogated is like the original waiting period for a woman if her which was a year, right? A woman originally when her husband died, she had to wait for a year before she get married, and then it was abrogated and it became 4 months and 10 days, right? Originally, according to some scholars, the Ramadan was optional. You could either fast or feed the poor, and then it became only one option, right? That's naskh. Like there's one rule, and then you have a new rule, right? The prayer was originally 2 rakahs, and then it became 4 rakahs or 3 rakahs, etc. Right? That's naskh, right? Wine was allowed, and then wine was not allowed. That's naskh. That's abrogation. Whereas taqyid is or taqyid of a mutlaq or takhsis of an am, qualifying something that's general or universal, like limiting the universality of something, that's something else, right? That's something else. So it says, ما كان للنبي والذين آمنوا أن يستغفروا للمشركين ولو كان أولي قربى من بعد ما تبين لهم أنهم أصحاب الجحيم. And it was not for the Prophet or any other believers to make istighfar, to seek forgiveness for polytheists or kuffar, even if they be close relatives, after it is clear to them that they are people of the hellfire. So, for example, may Allah protect us all, your parent leaves Islam or dies as a kafir, and that's how it appears to you. Obviously, it's possible that your parents could have accepted Islam in the last second of their life and you didn't hear them or you didn't see them or whatever. You don't know. But as far as you know, what in terms of what Allah has shown you, this person has not died on Iman. Can you make istighfar for them? Can you make dua for them, etc.? No. As far as you know, Allah has cursed them to eternal damnation, and that is it. So when you ask, you say, oh, Allah, please forgive him anyway. That's not you can't do that. Um, okay. So it's Babu birril walidi al-mushrik. However, should you be good to your non-Muslim parents? The answer is of course. Right. So it says, حدثنا محمد بن يوسف قال حدثنا إسرائيل. So Israel, this is a noble name, right? A prophet's name. Israel is in Yaqub. And this is a hadith scholar of Iraq. And that's a noble name to have, to name your child Israel, right? Obviously, you can understand why somebody might not do that today for certain reasons in certain places, but otherwise, Israel is the name of a prophet, right? It's a sacred name. So I remember I was in Jordan, and they had put Israel on the floor, and they were walking on it. That's the name of a prophet. You can't do that, right? And so, may Allah forgive us. قال حدثنا سماك عن مصعب بن سعد. So this is مصعب ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, right? عن أبيه سعد ibn وقاص قال نزلت في 4 آيات من كتاب الله تعالى. He said there were 4, Sa'd ibn Waqqas, he said there were 4 verses of the Quran that were revealed specifically concerning me, right? I was the sabab nuzul. I was the reason why the verse was revealed, right? Obviously, it applies to me, it applies to other people like me, but it applied to me. كانت أمي حلفت ألا تأكل ولا تشرب حتى أفارق محمدا. So my mother was a mushrika, she was a polytheist, and she swore by Allah that she would not eat and would not drink until I left the Prophet ﷺ. So, but she's making a scene. She's like, you just watch the shame and disgrace you're going to bring on your family when you killed your mother by being Muslim. Your mother swore by Allah that she would not eat and drink unless you left Islam, and if you don't do it, then what a bad son you are and how bad Islam is. Look at you, right? فأنزل الله عز وجل وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا. It says, and if they strive against you to worship gods beside me, right? With gods that you have no knowledge about, فلا تطعهما, then do not obey them. If you want to ask you to do shirk, to do kufr, you can't do that. However, wa means however here, صاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا, but be nice to them in the dunya, and the dunya being nice to them. Why in the dunya? Because in the akhirah, that's not your father or mother. That's not your child. Your child leaves Islam, that's not your child in the akhirah, right? Your family ties are cut off, right? Well, in dunya, this is sacred. In the akhirah, it is iman ties of iman and ties of kufr, right? But in the dunya, you have to be silatul rahim, right? So, صاحبهما في الدنيا معروفة, being nice to them, visit them, whatever they need, etc. But that's just in the dunya, right? So that was the first one. الثانية إني كنت أخذت سيفا أعجبني فقلت يا رسول الله هب لي هذا فنزلت يسألونك عن الأنفال, right? The second one is I took a sword from the war booty, right? From the war booty, from the war, from what they had collected from war, and say, oh, I'll have that sword. And I said, oh, Messenger of Allah, can I have this sword? And the verse about how to divide the spoils of war was revealed. والثالثة إني مرضت فأتاني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقلت sorry, camera's not right. فقلت يا رسول الله إني أريد أن أقسم مالي فأوصي بالنصف فقال لا فقلت الثلث فسكت فكان الثلث بعده جائزا. Right, so he said the second one was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I was dying, basically I was on my deathbed, or I thought I was on my deathbed, and I asked the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I said I want to basically give a half of my wealth away to the poor and needy. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no. Then I said, okay, can I do a third? And the Prophet ﷺ was silent, right? And then after that, a third was okay, right? And there's another version of the hadith mentions the Prophet ﷺ said, "Athuluth wal thuluthu kathir." The Prophet ﷺ said a third, and that's still a lot, right? And so on your deathbed, it is not valid for you if you're on your death, you're in ICU or something like that. May Allah protect us, and you give all your money away. It's not actually valid. It only counts in up to a third of your wealth, right? It's not valid to do that. It's up to the heirs to decide whether they will accept that or not. ورابعة إني شربت الخمر من قوم من الأنصار فضرب رجل منهم أنفي بلحي جمل فأتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأنزل الله عز وجل تحريم الخمر. And the fourth was that I was drinking wine with some people among the Ansar, and there was a fight. One of them hit the other guy in the face with a camel jaw. And I came to the Prophet ﷺ and I said, this is what happened. And the verse of the Quran about how then wine was totally prohibited. It was, that verse was revealed. So anyway, the point is the context, right, is what? My mother had made this oath. What should I do? He said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. If you die, you die. I'm not going to leave Islam. I'll be nice to you. I'll help you. I'm not going to leave Islam. Um, okay. And again, this hadith is in Muslim and it's in Fada'il. So Imam Muslim quotes it on and in Maghazi. So we're talking about history, think stories about what happened, and not to do with halal and haram. Fada'il, good deeds, not to do with halal and haram. Imam Muslim mentions it there. Is it on the level that perhaps Imam Muslim will put it in terms of halal haram? Maybe not. Is it in Sahih Bukhari? No. So again, when we're grading a hadith, we're looking at a hadith in terms of what are you going to use it for, not in terms of is it right or wrong. Right? That's not a really sound way of looking at things. That's a way that results in extremism and lack of balance. So it says حدثنا al-Humaydi. This is the Imam Shafi'i's companion in Mecca. قال حدثنا ابن عيينة. So he's originally Iraqi, Ibn Uyayna, but this is kind of like the one of Imam Shafi'i's key teachers and great hadith scholars, Sufyan ibn Uyayna. And he and Imam Malik, they often narrate similar hadiths. So it says حدثنا Hisham ibn Urwa. So this is Imam Malik frequently narrates from Hisham ibn Urwa, from his father, etc., from their grandmother. Um, and so this is a kind of a Madani chain here. قال أخبرني أبي قال أخبرتني أسماء بنت أبي بكر. So this is his mother, right? Hisham, the son of Urwa ibn Zubayr ibn Awam, and Zubayr ibn Awam is the husband of Asma bint Abi Bakr. قالت أتتني أمي راغبة في عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So what I remember correctly, Asma is the half sister of Aisha, not the full sister. If I remember correctly. So it mentions so Allahu A'lam. So this is so in it, so it says فسألت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أفأصلها. So her mother was the wife of Sayyidina Abu Bakr was not a Muslim. at that time. She was not a Muslim at the time. And so she said, Ya Rasulullah, my mother is now coming from Mecca to Medina, and right, I like, what do I do? Do I receive her or do I not receive her? Like, how am I supposed to treat her? Right? فسألت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أفأصلها? Should I keep ties with her or not? Like, what do I do? Do I lock her off until she becomes Muslim? How am I supposed to do this? قال نعم, keep ties with her. قال ابن عيينة فأنزل الله عز وجل فيها لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين. Right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah has not forbidden you concerning, I forbidden you to keep ties with those who do not fight you in the deen. Right? So if you have a non-Muslim friend, for example, who's not at war with Muslims or whatever it is, it's not haram or anything. Um, okay. So this hadith is a super hadith, right? So this hadith is like the first hadith in Bukhari, I think is like this. Al-Humaydi from Ibn Uyayna, and it goes up like that. So Humaydi, super amazing. Ibn Uyayna, super amazing. The rest is all super amazing. So this is a right McLaren F1 hadith, right? And so if that does that make sense to most people? Yeah. So Aman is here just to make sure I'm still with the realm of sanity, right? So McLaren F1 hadith, right? So then it says here, and then you look footnote. Hadith Sahih akhrajahu al-Musannif al-Bir. So the author himself in Sahih Bukhari uses the same hadith because in that collection he's using it to indicate this is a super Sahih hadith. Here he's saying I'm not even talking about super Sahih hadith. I'm talking about hadith to do with being nice to your parents, right? Do they still have McLaren F1? Still exists? Yeah. حدثنا موسى قال حدثنا عبد العزيز بن مسلم عن عبد الله بن دينار قال سمعت ابن عمر يقول رأى عمر رضي الله عنه حلة سيراء تباع فقال يا رسول الله ابتع هذه فالبسها يوم الجمعة فإذا جاءك الوفود وإذا جاءك الوفود فقال إنما يلبس هذه من لا خلاق له فأتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم منها بحلل فأرسل إلى عمر بحلة فقال كيف ألبسها وقد قلت فيها ما قلت قال إني لم أعطكها لتلبسها ولكن تبيعها أو تكسوها فأرسل بها عمر إلى أخ له من أهل مكة قبل أن يسلم. Okay, so the hadith says, with the chain transmission, he says that he heard Ibn Umar say, I heard Umar had a hulla siyara. He had this cloak that was siyara, right? And explains it here. Siyara, he says, نوع من البرود يخالطه حرير كالسيور, right? That is mixed with, it was mixed with silk, right? That has silk mixed into it. That was being sold. And so he said, O Messenger of Allah, why don't you buy this and wear it on Jum'ah, this nice silk thing on Jum'ah, and when the people come to visit you from far off tribes, like you can dress up for the occasion. He said, the only person who wears something like this is somebody who has nothing, i.e. in the akhirah, i.e. wearing silk is haram for men. And then the Prophet ﷺ was brought some hulal, was brought some gowns or cloaks or tops that were made out of silver. So made out of were like this, made out of silk, and he gave one to Sayyidina Umar, and then Sayyidina Umar says, Ya Rasulullah, how can I wear this when you said whoever wears this has nothing in judgment day, like it's haram. قال إني لم أعطيكها, I didn't give it to you for you to wear, I gave it to you to sell or to give somebody else to wear. And so Sayyidina Umar, which is now interesting in fiqh, he gave it to a brother of his to wear in Mecca. Okay, so what does this got to do with being good to one's parents? Oh, this is good to be basically being nice to his brother, right? That he didn't just give it to anybody, he gave it to his brother, even though his brother was a kafir. So that's what he's trying to show here. Now, there's something else which is very significant, is if something is haram for a Muslim, is it haram for a kafir? Right? That was Asim's question, right? It says, Isn't something haram to wear, haram to sell? Correct. So, oh, it's haram for me to drink alcohol, but can I sell it to other people to drink? No. It's haram, right? Can I give a, so how does that work? So there's this difference of agreement among the fuqaha on this issue on a fundamental level, which goes back to the question, is a kafir sinful for not abiding by the Sharia? Meaning, on Judgment Day, will the person stand before Allah and Allah saying, why didn't you believe in me? And why didn't you pray Fajr? And why didn't you pray Dhuhr? And why did you eat pork? And why did you lie? And why, and? Or will he be asked the question, why didn't you believe in me? Okay? So, هل الكفار مكلفون بالفروع أم بالأصول فقط? Right? Is a kafir asked to just believe? And then once he believes, then he's obliged to abide by the Sharia, or is a kafir obliged to abide by the Sharia, full stop. So the Jumhur, the Shafi'is, the Malikis, and the Hanbalis, we say, al-kafir mukallaf bil furu'. We say, a kafir is being told by Allah right now to abide by the Sharia. He might be ignorant of some of the details, but that doesn't make it halal. Just like a Muslim who is ignorant, like a Muslim, for example, he had no idea about wearing silk. I didn't know that I couldn't wear silk as a man. And you're helping him now do that. That you can't do that. You cannot help a Muslim do that because it's a haram. You have to tell him, brother, you weren't aware of this, but it's actually haram for you to do this. And then he says, yeah, but I want to do it anyway. So okay, fine, you do it. That's up to you, but I'm not going to help you. Right? You cannot help somebody do the haram. Right? You can't, sell them something knowing that they can use it for the sin or whatever it is. So this is super practical. So for example, in the Shafi'i school, you have a coffee shop and it's Ramadan. So can I serve coffee to a kafir during Ramadan, knowing that he's going to drink it right now? So the Shafi'i say, no, you cannot. That's haram. Cannot do that. Okay, so what do I do then? So you can't do that. It's haram. The Hanafis, they say no. It is not obliged. A kafir is not obliged to abide by the Sharia. So, it's not a very nice thing to do to offer a cup of coffee to a kafir what in Ramadan because it's Ramadan. But if you wanted to, you can sell it to him and he can drink it. And if you wanted to, you can make it for him and he can drink it. Because he's not sinful. The kafir in the eyes of the Hanafis is not sinful for breaking his fast. Because the kafir cannot fast. Kafir has to enter Islam and then fast. So they say the kafir is not obliged to abide by the Sharia. A kafir is obliged to become Muslim. So his sin on Judgment Day will be kufr. That's it. Not kufr and not abiding by the Sharia. Right? And so here's a proof for the Hanafis is look, Sayyidina Umar said, yeah, I can't wear silk, but my kafir brother can wear silk. Right? And I'm sure if we open this is in Sahih Muslim, I'm sure in Sahih Bukhari, I'm sure in Sahih Bukhari, look at the commentators like Ibn Hajar was Shafi, and I'm sure have various ways of explaining what Sayyidina Umar did. Right? But anyway, there's a case for the Hanafis on this issue, right? And generally speaking, don't tell any Shafis, right? That I'm saying this is the Hanafis are way more practical than the Shafis when it comes to like the world, right? Welcome to planet world Earth, right? The Shafis are more moral, generally speaking, outwardly, but the Hanafis, I have to understand the Hanafi madhab and the Maliki madhab, they were, right? And this is a bit of a hyperbole, but basically the law of the Muslim world, right? So if you think about like Libya to Spain, right, is Maliki. So they were kingdoms and politics all around that Maliki school, right? And then the Hanafi school, right? So yes, there were certain times where politics were run or the state was run according to the Shafi or Hanbali school, etc. But for majority of Islamic history, we're seeing it's with the Hanafi. So if you could case in point, India, if the whole of India was Shafi'i, there wouldn't be any Hindus left. Because in the Shafi school, a Hindu cannot pay jizya. It's Islam or the sword. Right? But in the Maliki school and in the Hanafi school, no, a kafir, any kafir can pay jizya. Right? So practically speaking, the world can function, right? The world can function, in a better way. So, it's like just how things work. Is it particularly moral to sell, to sell, coffee to a kafir, knowing that he may well be punished in Judgment Day. Maybe, maybe not, right? That's something else. But it just in terms of like how how to function in the world, generally speaking, that's a huge hyperbole, but generally speaking, the Malikis and the Shafi, the Hanafis, because they are a madhab that developed from amal, that comes from the practice of the Sahaba more than understanding hadith. Again, it's hyperbole. So but or general gross oversimplification, but also because they were actually used, right, for state, right. If you think about the Hanafi school, Qadi Abu Yusuf, he was the person put in charge of fiscal policy of the Abbasid Empire, right. So you're dealing with, you as an accountant, you're dealing with tax. Like those tax figures were given to you by Qadi Abu Yusuf, the student Imam Abu Hanifa, right. So you know you're in Spain, the Qadi of Cordoba is the student of Imam Malik, right? As opposed to, generally speaking, the Shafi'is and Hanbalis, particularly Hanbalis, didn't really have that much role in government and in qada as much as the Malikis and Hanafis, right? But don't tell Shafis I said that. Right? Okay. It says Babu la yasubbu walidayhi, right? Not cursing one's parents. So it says حدث محمد بن كثير قال أخبرنا سفيان. And so how do I know which Sufyan this is? This is Sufyan al-Thawri or is this Sufyan ibn Uyayna? So I have to look at who's narrating from him and who comes after. And so generally speaking, Bukhari is not going to have usually one person between him and Sufyan al-Thawri usually. Right? I don't know if that ever happens, right? But so I don't know who this person is here, but generally speaking, if he comes the second in line, right? If you compare this hadith to this hadith, right? This had Humaydi and then it said Ibn Uyayna. This is Sufyan ibn Uyayna, right? And so here that I can tell by the tabaqa, which generation are we talking about, right? There's Bukhari, then there's like Humaydi and those people, and then Imam Malik and those people, and Ibn Uyayna and then people older. So Sufyan al-Thawri he's of a similar tabaqa, but he's a bit older, right? I don't know exactly when he died, but he died, I believe, before Sufyan Ibn Uyayna. So this is most likely Ibn Uyayna. Allahu A'lam. It says حدثني سعد بن إبراهيم عن حميد بن عبد الرحمن عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن دين عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من الكبائر أن يشتم الرجل والديه. So of the great gross sins is that a man should curse his or insult his own parents. قالوا كيف يشتم? How could he do that? They said, how on earth would somebody curse his own parents? قال يشتم الرجل فيشتم أباه وأمه, right? That he insults a man and says, may Allah curse your parents. And then that man says back to him, may Allah curse your parents. So who caused it? The first person. So you cursed your own parents. So don't do that, right? That's what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us here, as he did in many things, is what's called sad al-dhara'i, blocking the means. Something that is a means to something else, don't open that door. Don't do that, right? Don't be the cause for somebody having to say that. Um, قال حدثنا محمد بن سلام قال أخبرنا مخلد قال أخبرنا ابن جريج قال, so this is Ibn Jurayj. This is like one of the great inheritors of um, the Meccan school of fiqh, right? So Ibn Jurayj is famous, for example, for temporary marriages and things like that, right? And that madhab died out. The Meccan school, it died out. قال سمعت محمد بن الحارث بن سفيان يزعم أن عروة بن عياض أخبره أنه سمع عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص يقول من الكبائر عند الله تعالى أن يس يستسب يس يستس يستسب يستغفر, yeah. أن يستسب الرجل لوالده, right, is to cause or to encourage a man to curse his own father, right? His own father, right? And يستسب الرجل لوالده, right? That a man should cause somebody else to curse his own parents, i.e., by getting into arguments like this. Hello, you finished? Mm. So guys, you try and do it in one go, because otherwise it keeps going and going and going and going.
Yeah, but you can't be quiet.
Okay, okay. Okay, so my kids are here taking notes
Loudly.
loudly.
So,
Okay, باب عقوبة عقوق الوالدين, the punishment for being rude to one's parents. So notice it doesn't say disobeying with parents, right? Yes, there's one or two hadiths where we see it was about obedience to parents, but obedience to parents is one thing, meaning my dad said do this and I have to do it. That's one thing. عقوق الوالدين is something else, right? So being rude to your parents. So are you always obliged to obey your parents? There's a fiqh issue, go to fiqh and ask them, do I have to obey my parents in this or not? But rude is something else, right? Rude, rude is something else. Yeah, it's not accurate translation. So uquq, right, is being rude to them, right? So imagine, for example, your dad didn't ask you to do anything, but you just looked at him with disdain, right? Or someone says, "Oh, hey, let's say, for example, the son's not talking to dad for ages, right? And dad is at the masjid, right? And then you literally walk past your father in front of everybody. Everyone's like, oh, I guess they're going to make up. He's going to talk to each other, and just walk past and looked at him and just kept going. And everybody saw you. Your dad didn't ask you to do anything, but it's super rude, right? Being very rude to your parents, right? So uquq is not the same. So they may be in a scenario where in this case you're not looking to them, you're not obeying them was very rude. But let's say, for example, your dad says, give me all your money now. Do I have to obey that? Right? And second, so now you could be politely say no, but that's not uquq al-walidain. So aqqa walidahu is not the same as obeying or disobeying, right? So it says حدثنا عبد الله بن يزيد قال حدثنا عيينة ابن عبد الرحمن عن أبيه عن أبي بكرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ما من ذنب أجدر أن يعجل لصاحبه العقوبة مع ما يدخر له من البغي وقطيعة الرحم. So it says there is no sin whose punishment is more likely to be rained down upon him in the dunya, along with what is saved for him of punishment in the akhirah, than al-baghi, right? Oppression and qati'at rahim, right? So he says here baghi, al-dhulm, right? Oppression, etc. And he says wa qati'at rahim, and cutting off family ties. Right? You tell your brother, get out of my face, I'm never talking to you ever again. You can't do that. Right? You can't do that. So do I have to live with my brother? No. Do I have to lend money to my brother? No. Do I have to, whatever it is, I don't have to do that, but I cannot have this attitude. You can't have this attitude, right? You can't have this thing like, you're not going to get out of my face and never talking to you ever again, right? You can say, bro, you really, really annoy me. I cannot be with you right now. Please, I need to leave. Will you permit me to leave? He's like, yes, go. It's on E. Do you have an argument? Right? I don't want to say anything I shouldn't say. I need to leave. Okay. And then, a few days later, I'm sorry. I left my call. Let's talk about this, right? I know fundamental things we disagree on. I don't have to do business with you. I don't have to live with you. I don't have to do this, but we're still brothers though, right? Shake hands, hug, fine. And just, agree to disagree on whatever you want to agree to disagree on, or apologize and just move on, right? Um, but you cannot have this thing like, get out of my face. I have nothing to do with you. حدثنا الحسن بن بشر قال حدثنا الحكم بن عبد الملك بن عن قتادة عن الحسن. And so there's a number of these names, I don't want to go to tangents, right? But like we saw Ikrimah before, right? The freed slave of Ibn Umar. We see Qatada. So in today's world, everybody is by default very, very, what's the word? By default, very, very, what's the word? Sectarian, right? Like, when was the last time you prayed in a Shia masjid? Never, as far as I know. Never prayed in a Shia masjid. Where are your Shi'i friends? None. Okay, so you ever met a Zaidi? I've never met a Zaidi in my life. Ever met a Shi'i in my life? Never. Wow, okay, fine. Would you ever study with a Shi'i? Never. A Zaidi? Never. Um, and Ibadi, never. ISIS, do you have any shuyukh from ISIS? Like, never. Okay. Like, okay, that's just how people are, right? And we're totally fine with that. And that's okay for when you're dealing with, like, say, masjid life or basic education. But for ulama to be like that, that's not acceptable, right? Because this guy's Shi'i, what does it mean? He doesn't know anything about hadith suddenly? It doesn't mean he doesn't know anything about Arabic. Like, what's Shi'ism got to do with Arabic, right? This guy might be one of the best poets ever, and he's Shi'i. Why not? Right? What's that got to do with anything? So when you see, for example, in tafsir, we're going to be quoting, for example, Zamakhshari all the time. Zamakhshari, hardcore Mu'tazili. Why are you quoting him? Because he's amazing. Okay, but why are you quoting him tafsir? He's this. Why are you quoting Ibn Taymiyyah? Why are you quoting this? It's like, that really doesn't matter. Right? So when it comes to academics and you're sectarian when it comes to academics, that's ridiculous. Right? That's ridiculous. Right? There's no basis for that. Right? One of my teachers, in hadith, he said, don't be surprised, but half of my teachers are all Wahhabi. It's like, okay, it's got nothing to do with anything, right? Or, some of my teachers, they have opinions I totally disagree with, right? That's not a problem, but because you're dealing on an academic level, right? And so here, when you look at Imam Bukhari, as Sunnis, we're interested in, are you a reliable source for hadith, yes or no? As opposed to for the Shia, they say you're not reliable if you're Sunni, right? So we are so academic about it that we will accept a Shi'i to critique our hadiths. So there's a famous hadith critic called Ibn Khirash, he's Shi'i. And he telling us don't rely on so and so, do rely on so and so. And we're relying on his criticism of our hadiths, right? Even though, because we are more objective. So if you look at, for example, Qatada, this is Qatada ibn Da'ama Sadusi. He is famous for having said, and Allahu A'lam, he's famous for having said that predestination applies to your good deeds, not your bad deeds. So that Allah destines that you do good deeds, but Allah doesn't destine you to do bad deeds, right? And that's like totally wrong. That's not a Sunni belief at all. Ikrimah, who we saw before, he's apparently he was of the Khawarij. He's like an ISIS person. They're like, whoa, that person's crazy. It's like, yeah, but he's a scholar. He knows a hadith. He's reliable. Maybe he was at a certain place. It might be useful in history, might be useful in all sorts of things. And so the way that we work, like, this person, that group, this person, that group. Abdul Razzaq al-Sana'ani, we quote him all the time. Shi'i, right? Sufyan al-Thawri, right? We just saw him before. He said, Kana yuthalith bi Ali. He used to say that Sayyidina Ali is better than Sayyidina Uthman. That's against Sunni belief. We say that Sayyidina Uthman is better than Sayyidina Ali. That's part of Sunni belief. So he has an opinion that is contrary to Sunni Islam, but we don't really care because he's great in this or great in that or whatever it is. So it's very important to understand that this sectarian thing, that's fine. When you say, like, okay, I want my kids to hang out with these people, fine, that's not a problem. I want the student people that I study my basic stuff with, fine. But as an academic, right, that you're like, no, because he's from that masjid, we don't talk to him, right? Because he's Deobandi, I don't listen to his fatwa, subhanallah, right? Because he's from that country, because he's from Yemen, he's like this. Because he's from that, it's like, well, what are you talking about? When it gets to academics, there's academics. Does he have a logical argument or not? Okay, so he says, عن قتادة عن حسن البصري عن عمران بن حسين قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما تقولون في الزنا وشرب الخمر والسرقة. He said, your Prophet ﷺ said, Sahaba, what do you think about zina? What do you think about drinking alcohol? What do you think about theft? قلنا الله ورسوله أعلم. They said, Allah and His Messenger know best. قال هن الفواحش وفيهن العقوبة. He said, those are the vile and gross actions, and they have particular punishment. There's had punishment for these things. ألا أنبئكم بأكبر الكبائر? Shall I not tell you about the worst of the worst sins? الشرك بالله عز وجل وعقوق الوالدين. Right? And he said what? Worshipping gods besides Allah and being rude to one's parents. وكان متكئا فاحتفظ وقال والزور. Right? And he was leaning down, reclining as he said these things, and he sat up and he said, and false witness. Right? May Allah protect us all. So you go to court and you say, Wallahi al-Azim, I saw this man kill this person, and he did not. Right? Subhanallah, right? Or whatever it is, you do false witness in court because you take people's rights away, and then you cement that through a court situation, right? This person's in jail forever, this person's killed, this person, whatever it is, may Allah protect us, right? باب بكاء الوالدين. Says حدثنا موسى قال حدثنا حماد بن سلمة. So again, Hamad ibn Salama, we do not find him in Bukhari. He's not of the level to be on Bukhari. Classic person. Imam Muslim will use him in certain cases, right? And I think Imam Bukhari uses him in one case, if I'm mistaken. He uses him, but Hamad ibn Salama, he's not of those kind of that level. عن زياد ibn مخراق عن طيسلة أنه سمع ابن عمر يقول بكاء الوالدين من العقوق والكبائر. It says the fact that your parents are crying, right? That you make your parents cry, okay? من العقوق is of being rude to them. والكبائر of the major sins. May Allah forgive us all. Okay, I need to stop here. Inshallah, we'll stop. It says Bab Da'wati the dua of one's parents. Inshallah, we'll stop here. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك